Hi, this is Charles Butler, host of the Reality Check with Charles Butler. What we try to accomplish on the Reality Check is to bring you information to make you an informed decision maker. People are calling President Trump a racist, an admitted and an avowed white nationalist, and nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I often point out that, and I have people Google this constantly, that Jesse Jackson gave Donald Trump a Lifetime Achievement Award in 1999 for helping Black Americans.
Okay, we are live. And this is the Reality Check with Charles Butler. Hey, folks, I am trying to listen to myself, and I'm not having. Don't know if I'm connecting here. Let's see what we got. What we got. So it's really hard to kind of check things out before we get started. But hopefully, we will bring on Mr. Frank Venucio, and we'll have a little chat. I'm trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. Let's see. Okay. I don't know. Trying to get this done, but I know it's going out over the air. I just can't hear it. I can't hear myself. But that's okay. We'll switch over and bring Frank on. And hey, Mr. Frank Venucio, the talk show host and leader of leaders, men of men, talk show host, TV personality, heading a think tank called the New York Analysis of Policy and Government. Hey, Frank, how you doing?
Charles, it's great to be with you.
Frank? Okay, not pulling Frank up. Okay, what's going on here? Frank, are you there with us?
Charles, it's great to be with you.
Okay, I hear something, but it's not coming through my headset, so I don't know what the heck is going on here. Let's see. Shoot. Let's see. Frank, can you hear me?
Charles, I can hear you fine.
Let's see here. Okay, there we are. Frank, can you hear me?
Charles, you're coming in loud and clear.
Great, great. Hey, look, question for you. Miss Tlaib, Congresswoman Tlaib. I've been talking about this for a while. Congresswoman Tlaib. And the Democrats confusing the message for Donald Trump and other Republicans. And when I listen to Tlaib and I listen to her remarks, I know that what she said and what people are saying that she said are two entirely different things. And it really ticks me off, Frank, that these people are putting words in her mouth. It just really, for some reason, it rubs me the wrong way. I don't know about you, but did you hear what she said and how people are trying to categorize what she said?
Is this the comment regarding the Holocaust?
Yeah.
And the Palestinians?
Yeah.
I did hear what she said. I frankly don't think that she's been miscast. Unfortunately, she and several of her colleagues have engaged in statements which I think are rather outrageous and which I think represent a wing of the Democrat Party that is frankly somewhat worrisome.
Okay.
Look, going back to the 2016 convention, the Democrats, when the Democrats during their platform fight decided to delete any reference to the phrase God, indicates that the Democratic Party has been not just anti-Semitic, but anti-Christian as well. I think it represents a radical left-wing ideology that is becoming more pronounced within the Democratic Party. Look, if you have a political party that embraces socialism, as the Democrats do, if you're a socialist, you really don't like any religion, not Judaism, not Christianity, nothing, simply because in socialism, the government, frankly, is God. And any other competitor for the hearts and minds of the people is considered an unwanted rival. And that's the way socialists see religion.
Okay. Okay. I don't doubt that. I'm not disagreeing with you on that. But let's take a moment and let's listen to what Congresswoman Tlaib had to say. I thought she was rather awkward in what she said, but what she said, and I don't know if she really meant what she said because it kind of didn't make sense to me given the history of the Palestinian Israeli conflict. But this is what she said. Let's listen to it.
Be the only Democrat who's publicly supported a one-state solution. So, what is your vision for a one-state solution that meets both Palestinian and Israeli Jewish national aspirations?
Absolutely. And let me tell you, I mean, for me, just a few, I think 2 weeks ago or so, we celebrated, or just it took a moment, I think, in our country to remember the Holocaust. And there's a kind of a calming feeling I always tell folks when I think of the Holocaust and the tragedy of the Holocaust and the festers, Palestinians who lost their land and some lost their lives, their livelihood, the human dignity, their existence in many ways have been wiped out on some people's passport. I mean, just all of it was in the name of trying to create a safe haven for Jews post the Holocaust, post the tragedy and horrific persecution of Jews across the world at that time. And I love the fact that it was my ancestors that provided that.
Okay, Frank. You heard it. Not a small clip, not a segment like they do Clarence Thomas or President Trump. You heard the whole thing, what she said, what everybody's kind of going off on. And to me, what she said was, I take great calm in the fact that my Palestinian ancestors or the Palestinian population provided this safe haven for Jews. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, but that's what I heard.
Well, first of all, I don't think there's any historical justification for saying that Palestinians created a safe haven for Jews. Certainly, if we look at the start of the Israeli war for independence, that wasn't the case at all. I'm really getting concerned with so many politicians, predominantly on the left, that have sort of warped history and have gotten away with it because the fawning media, which supports anything a left winger says, never really does any significant fact checking on it. Again, you have to go back to that time period itself, and there's really not much justification for it. If you look at the leader that was Sani, um, uh, he called, I believe, during that period of time when the Jews left Germany and got to the Middle East, he called for the massacre of Jews in the Arab world. He said this, by the way, on Nazi radio stations during the Second World War. Um, Palestinians also were active in helping the Wehrmacht. So I don't really think there's any historical justification for what Tlaib said.
Yeah, and given the fact too that she is an attorney, so she's not a stupid person. She does understand or should understand when she's making comments like that the history of the confiscation or the taking of Palestinian territory or Palestinian land for this nation we call Israel. When I talk about that, and when you really look at the what happened in 1948, for instance, when Israel was created, the United Nations called for uh, an analysis to be done, and they sent in a very well-established diplomat. His name was Count Bernadotte, and Count Bernadotte, Bernadotte, and his helper, his assistant, was a guy, an American named Ralph Bunche, who was the first Black American to win the Nobel Peace Prize. The second was Martin Luther King. So when Count Bernadotte issued his report to the UN after being in Palestine for several years, he recommended that there not be an Israeli state formed for the displaced European Jews. Well, his car was blown up by one of the Israeli terrorist groups, the Haganon or the Irgun. We don't know which one. The Irgun has taken credit for it. They're part of it. Now, people need to understand that one person's terrorist is another person's hero. I always say George Washington was a terrorist to the British, but he's the father of our country, our hero. Same way with Golda Meir, Menachem Begin, Moshe Dayan. They were all part of these terrorist groups called the Haganon and the Irgun. And they killed Count Bernadotte. Ralph Bunche survived the terrorist attack or the assassination attempt, and he went on to forge a peace in the Middle East. That's what he won the Nobel Peace Prize for, the settling the Palestinian issue. But when we look back,
Well, I don't think the Palestinian issue certainly has been settled at all.
well, that's
The
what he won. But
Palestinian
that's what he won.
people as a whole have been ill-served by their leaders. Let's be blunt. The reason that there is no Palestinian state in the year 2019 is pretty much the fault of a Palestinian leader named Yasser Arafat. In 1970s and in the 1990s, deals that had been struck that basically would have given the Palestinian people their own state, but the greed, the dishonesty of Yasser Arafat and his followers basically resulted in no deal.
I don't
If you
disagree
go
with
back
that.
to the possible, if you go back to the 1970s, there was a deal struck, I believe it was 1977, 1978, which established a Palestinian state, which gave the Palestinians about 90%, actually some figures 95% of everything they wanted. But at the last minute, Arafat held back. One of the reasons he did that was that establishing a legitimate Palestinian state would have cast a spotlight on the massive theft that Yasser Arafat was engaged in against the Palestinian people.
Right.
Aid money, for example, that came from across the planet went into Yasser Arafat's pocket.
Right.
He and his wife lived in absolute luxury in Paris. He didn't want to upset that apple cart. So as a result, there was no deal struck. The fact of the matter is the Palestinian leadership, rather than negotiate in good faith with anyone who they're negotiated with, whether it be the Israelis, the Americans, the United Nations, simply have not gone back on their call for the utter destruction of the Israeli state. It's hard to have a negotiation when one side is willing to give the other side 95% of everything they want, but that other side, the Palestinian side, continues to call for the utter destruction of their trading partner. That doesn't work.
But see, this is the you hit the nail on the head. It's not it's not the Palestinian people, it's the Palestinian leadership. And when you talk about the 70s, that was an issue. But let's fast forward to December 2000, when President Clinton, Madeleine Albright, John Podesta, Sam Berger, who else was there? That's from the United side. We had like several people there. Then from the Palestinian side, you had Mercat, I think, a guy named Mohammed Daland, and from Israel, you had Ben Biamin. They signed this thing called the Israeli-Palestinian peace, and again, Palestine was offered everything that they wanted: a state, reparations, resettlement of the refugees, and Arafat walked away from that deal too. And Madeleine Albright, I asked her a question about that at a meeting, at a conference she was speaking at. And she addressed it, and then she hyped her book and said, "It'll be in my book. That's all I'm going to say." Seriously,
Madeleine Albright was not one of our better people in government. Of course, she kind of flubbed a lot of the negotiations that she was part of. Look, the fact of the matter is the Palestinian people have been suffering a great deal, certainly not just at the hands of what they consider their enemies, the Israelis, but also, let's be blunt, the majority of Palestinians live in Jordan. The Jordanians have been somewhat leery of the Palestinians. The Palestinian people need to revolt against the collection of crooks, terrorists, and murderers who have somehow gained the control of representing the Palestinian people.
Okay.
Until that changes, you're not going to see any kind of intelligent resolution of what goes on in that area of the world, simply because it's difficult to negotiate with terrorists and crooks.
Well, the Israelis and the U.S. are willing to give the Palestinians exactly what they want. That's my point. And I think this Talib lady, I don't like her. I don't like anything that she said thus far. But I think what she said and what she meant from her perspective was that her people sacrificed their homes, their land to establish this haven for Jews.
Hey, this is Leonora Cravota from Red State Talk Radio for My Pillow. I used to have trouble sleeping. My Pillow changed all that. I now fall.
Which is what she said, not me. Which is what she said. So I'm not putting words in her mouth. I'm just listening to what she said. And I tell you, Frank, it's interesting. It's interesting. Frank, we have a caller out here, Melvin Winnie. It looks like. Hello, caller. What would you like to talk about?
Yes.
Melvin.
Yes, Charles. Hi. Good. Glad you took my call. Thank you for taking my call. You mentioned Jesse Jackson early on in the program, and in regards to the left placing the name or labeling the president as a racist. The left, do they not realize that the president has stacks of canceled checks that he could display a whip on these people to say, well, if I'm a racist, why in the heck would I be funding people that I don't care for, that I hate? It's kind of like I don't get it. I'm black too. I'm a black American from Saratoga Springs. I support this president 110% because of the foreign occupier that we had in the last administration who occupied the Oval Office. He was just a fraud.
He
was a puppet of the liberal left Democrat Party.
Yes.
He had no interest in helping his. I can't even say his own. The shade of his skin is almost the shade of mine. He's not. He's not authentic. He's not a black man.
No, he wasn't. No,
as far as I can say, he
doesn't
occupy.
He doesn't consider himself black. He doesn't consider himself black. He doesn't consider himself black when he was running for president. People did not listen. Again, they didn't listen to what Barack said. He said when they would say, "Well, you'll be the first black," and he said, "No, I'm half white, and my father is from Kenya," sending a message that I am not a descendant of an American slave. My father was from Kenya, and my mother was a white woman. So, and black people, because they're so stupid, or I should say, excuse me, politically unsophisticated, they weren't listening to what this man was saying. Here in Chicago, we knew Obama. And Frank and I talk about this all the time. Frank Venucio, who's on the line with us. Frank, we have a listening problem in America. When I was working at Hewlett Packard, we took a sales course, and the first thing they taught us was to actively listen. Do you remember those stories? That training?
That's a great point. The fact is, let's look more at results than at the rhetoric. The fact is, under the Trump administration, black unemployment has hit its lowest level in history. You have to look at real solid results. Can anyone out there name one solid accomplishment that the Obama administration did on behalf of black America? Other than absolutely nonsensical rhetoric, you can't name one substantive accomplishment at all. Indeed, what the Obama administration did to cover up its failure to do anything for black America, it simply tried to pit black against white, Jew against Christian, old against young,
straight against LGBT,
identity politics, simply because it had no accomplishments to point to.
But again, that's typical. Go ahead, Will. Go ahead, Melvin.
As one radio talk show host who happens to be black says, "Wait a minute, take your time. I'll wait. If you come back with an answer, take your time. I'll wait." But he's not done one thing for the black community in this country. And like I said, he's just a puppet for the liberal left, and he still is, and he's a criminal. This guy, like I said, he's an undercover Muslim, a foreign occupier, and I'm born and raised in this country. I love this country. There's no better place in this world that anybody would ever be. As I think that everybody breaking in, I don't see anybody breaking out.
Exactly.
This is ridiculous. I mean, for blacks to fall for this nonsense that
But
the left
but Jesse
throws at
Jackson,
them and
but
expect
Jesse
them to
Jesse
go.
Jackson, Jesse Jackson wove the seed of confrontation. He wove and he planted the seeds of division. That's all Jesse's doing, and it's continued to be Jesse's doing. However, I think, and I may be too optimistic, but I think that America, all Americans, are coming together under this president. And I really, I was at a dinner party Friday in Los Angeles. A lot of liberals, and I said to these folks, we may be different. We may have come at these issues differently, but I noticed that all of these liberals that were sitting around the table, they were doing things in Zimbabwe and and Niger and places like that. And
Yeah,
I'm going, well, why not?
nothing in
Why?
Harlem,
Wait a
nothing in the
minute.
Bronx,
Wait a minute. Why not go to? We're in L.A., so why
nothing in
not go?
Baltimore.
Why not go to South Central? Why not go to Oakland?
Right,
Why not go to South Side of
Oakland.
Chicago? Okay, or West Side of Chicago. So but people are seeing through these things, and we as Americans, and Frank, I want you to jump in here. We as Americans, I think, we're coming together under Donald Trump in spite of the media, in spite of these people telling us we have division and a problem. I don't see it.
Don't see it.
I think
Don't
it's
see
an
it.
excellent
Every
point. And,
man.
and let's take something that both you and I have some connection to, and that is Michigan and the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit and the automobile industry did a lot, did a great deal for unemployment to help blacks move up into the middle class. No president before Donald Trump did a single thing to protect American industry. What Donald Trump has done in his fight with the Chinese on the trade battle has done more for American working class, more for American minorities than anything other president has done. And yet, most of the media basically blast him for standing up to the Chinese. That's something that we should all be in on, whether are you Democrat, Republican, black, white, anything else. That's something we should all be on the same side as. And
Well, I think that
Correct.
I think
I
that
believe
people are seeing that. I think that people are seeing that. I think that people are doing that. And I think that people are giving this president credit. And I can tell you in my travels, I hear people saying all the time that they support the president. I hear, and some, like I was at this dinner party and this lady said something about the person occupying the White House. And I said to her, looked her straight in the eye and I said to her, I love Donald Trump. I love everything he's doing. In fact, I everything
right.
that he's done,
Yeah.
I said I've been saying do it 30 years ago. I've been talking about these bad trade deals, the immigration issue for over 30 years. Nobody wanted to listen. I was shouted down, just like they shouted down Stephen Moore. And Stephen had to withdraw from going on the Federal Reserve Board. But they shout you down when you don't tout globalism and globalization. And I've never believed in those things because they're not American.
Well, as Frank's point, Charles, as he said, Detroit, the auto manufacturer of the world. People, around the world would die for anything that was made in America. And automobiles were shipped all over the world. But leftist Democrat Party taxed industry out of existence in Detroit. Look what's left behind. You think they care about them black folks that were on them assembly lines or white folks that was on them assembly lines? They don't care because more than likely those people who were on the assembly lines were all conservative, mostly conservative.
Well,
85% of them were, and probably voted conservative.
And they
So it's like, go ahead.
and they see the liberals need someone to play parent to. They need to be parental. They need to be in control. And when you're not in control, when you're not speaking their narrative, when you don't believe what they believe, the first thing they do is say, "Well, you're stupid, or you're a flat earther," or then they go to God. Well, after you beat them on all the facts, then they go, "Well, I believe in Jesus Christ. I don't believe in any political entity." Yada yada yada.
Right. Yeah.
Frank,
infanticide, but you believe in God.
Frank, what do you think about that?
Hey, come on.
Frank?
Well, That
Yes.
so right. Sorry.
Frank.
Yeah. The fact of the matter is, let's look at real accomplishments, not on rhetoric. For far too long, we've had ignorant media that looks to rhetoric rather than reality. And when it comes to reality, the fact is that, as Melvin said, the conservative side, the Republican side, has done a lot more for the American working man and woman, for the minority in America, than anything the Democrats or the liberals have always done. And you made the point that that basically the left has essentially patronized the minority groups. They believe that they should be quiet, that they should simply vote Democrat, keep their mouths shut, and be grateful for whatever crumbs they decide to give them from the table.
Well, that's not me. So, I get a lot of pushback because I'm very vocal and I have my own thoughts. And people go, well, and I tell them from the get go, I'm not on the plantation. I'm sorry that I'm not a Martin Luther King kind of guy, um, but I believe in being an American and participating in this thing we call the American dream. What do you think about that?
I think you're dead on right. And you even look at the way history is taught in our schools. We should be talking about people like Crispus Attucks rather than Al Sharpton.
Right.
You put up Al Sharpton, who's a clown, who's an ignorant person, who is a race baiter, and yet somehow the white left-wing media has decided that this clown, that this ignorant person, that this baiter is somehow the voice of Black America. What an insult!
It is an insult.
Not
And
a
it's
voice for me, Frank or Charles.
well, it's an
Yeah.
insult that the
And
guy
as
has a.
Frank was saying,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, you go ahead. Go ahead, Willie.
Oh, as Frank was saying, as far as patronizing the black community, the Democrats, it's like you hear them say, "I'm from the government. I'm here to help." What they should have is the crank of a double barrel shotgun. Get the heck on out of here, because I don't want your help. So all you ever done was cripple us, black folks, black community.
Well,
I look at these little handouts, a little this, little that. It's putting us all on welfare and taking away all our dignity by taxing jobs away from us. You're from the government. You're here to help. What you ought to hear is that click, click, and boom. You got 3 seconds to get on away from here. But no. But he's right. Al Sharpton. What do? They all run up to Al Sharpton to kiss his ring up there at Sylvia's and holler. Or when they get themselves in trouble, the first place they go run to is a pew in the black church. That's the only time you ever see him around the black community.
That's it. Dick Durbin was fronted by a friend of mine who's an attorney at a club I belong to, and the club tried to. The gentleman asked the member of the club asked Dick Durbin, how come he wouldn't appoint any black judges to the federal courts. He hadn't put any black judges up, and he said, "I put women up." They try to hold white women out like they're somehow connected to this thing we call a minority or diversity. I hate the term diversity. I hate the term people of color. We need to get back to giving the people an opportunity based on their merit, based on their qualifications, not their gender and not their race.
And let's look also at the big pushes that the left has, the big causes that the left espouses. Well, they espouse, birth control up to the point of infanticide. Let's not forget how the whole movement began. Margaret Sanger, one of the worst racists in American history, pushed the concept of abortion because she felt, quite bluntly, that too many black babies were being born. Let's talk about gun control. Gun control was instituted by Democrats in the Old South in the aftermath of the Civil War because freed blacks were trying to protect themselves from organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. If you scratch the history of the left, you'll find an extraordinary legacy of racism, of being anti-black, and yet somehow or other, the media, which supports them like crazy, continues to portray them, not the right, as being for the black community.
And it's been that way since Roosevelt. And I think we as a group have gone out of the world a hole backwards. to be polite about it. But I think people, and I see this all the time. I think that people are coming back and realizing that we're all Americans. We need to move forward, and that's what we're doing, in spite of people like Reverend Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and the others.
Well, Charles, great show as usual. Gentlemen, you have a great afternoon, and hope to talk to you again.
Well, thanks for calling in. Appreciate it, Mel.
Take care.
You're welcome. First time caller. Hey, Frank. I covered a lot of topics here today, and as always, man, it's great having you on board.
And Charles, I look forward to our next conversation. Talk to you next week.
Okay, sir. Take care. Okay, folks, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back, and we're going to pick up on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I think that we'll talk about this young man who was stopped by a police officer, and he was never told why he was arrested and what people wanted to do and why he was being arrested for drunk driving. It's outrageous what happened to this guy. Outrageous.
Hey, this is Leonora Cravota from Red State Talk Radio for My Pillow. I used to have trouble sleeping. My Pillow changed all that. I now fall asleep within moments of my head touching my pillow. That's how comfortable My Pillow is with its patented interlocking fill. My Pillow stays cool and does not go flat. Plus, it's machine washable and dryable. My Pillow has a 10-year warranty and a 60-day comfort guarantee. My Pillow is also the official pillow of the National Sleep Foundation, and it's made right here in the USA. My Pillow is now offering Red State Talk Radio listeners a 4-pack special with 2 premium standard or queen pillows and 2 go anywhere pillows. That's 4 pillows for the price of 1. To take advantage of this special offer, call 1-800-961-9194 and ask for promo code Red State. That's 1-800-961-9194, promo code Red State. Put sleepless nights behind you with My Pillow, the most comfortable pillow you will ever own.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Kim Moline, co-owner of the Wingstop restaurants in Lansing and South.
I've got to be honest, although I was on a payroll company, I was pretty apprehensive about transitioning into a new one. When it comes to payroll, delays and lost data are really unacceptable. But I'm happy to say your staff really made it easy for us, and the transition couldn't have been smoother. And now, as we consider taking advantage of some of the other services you offer, well, let's just say that next time we won't be so chicken.
Thanks, Kim. Just call me at 630-242-1507. That's 630-242-1507. Or check us out at the web at precisionpayroll.com. That's precisionpayroll.com.
Coming to you on a dirt road. I was just thinking about this story that I read earlier today, and it was in the Washington Post. For those of you who'd like to track it down, it's in the Washington Post. And sorry, I'm laughing, but the title of the article is "The Best Retort to the Question to the Election's Too Important to Nominate a Woman." Okay, so this is a story, Washington Post front page, by a reporter named Jennifer Rubin. And Jennifer starts this conversation out, or this article out, by saying, "We noted the unfortunate sentiment expressed. We have noted the unfortunate sentiment expressed openly among Democrats, even among some female Democrats, that the 2020 election is about an existential threat to our country, re-electing President Trump. That is far too important to risk nominating a woman. We've argued that there is little rational reason. There's a little rational reason to assume that any female contender would be disadvantaged running against Trump. But the attitude is disturbingly pervasive among Democrat voters as well as among party insiders." Okay. So just listening or reading this first paragraph. Okay. Reading this first paragraph. They said it, she said we've noted it's unfortunate that among Democrats and even female Democrats, they say the election is too important to elect a female. What does that say? It says that no American female has the chutzpah. Let's see, another word, that's a Yiddish word, has the tenacity, the charisma, the experience, the whatever it is to be elected, to be elected president of the United States of America. See, the United States of America is different. You know, you could elect a woman president of Israel, a Golden Meir, but it's only been one. You can elect a prime minister of Great Britain, but there have only been two. Maggie Thatcher and then Theresa May. I don't know how Theresa May made prime minister, but Maggie Thatcher was a seriously qualified, competent person. I don't look at her as a woman. That she's one of my heroes. I tell you, uh, Golda Meir, tough woman, part of the Irgun, stone cold fighter. Okay, leader, not only in Israel but on the world stage. Then you have smaller countries like Nigeria. They elected a woman president. Yeah, what's the big deal? The men are too lazy. Did I say that? Yes. So call in you Nigerians and get on my case. But I don't care. So, and I've said this time and time again, I don't see any American woman politician that's on the horizon. That includes Camilla Harris, certainly Pocahontas, Dianne Feinstein, any of these women, Klobuchar, any of these women who are out here who would be an outstanding president. They could be president. I mean, what Barack Obama set the bar to the lowest level ever. This was a man, a person who had never managed a 7-Eleven. He'd never been in charge of a group. The last thing Barack Obama was in charge of before he became president was being editor of the Harvard Law Review. Oh, I forgot, and his presidential campaign. So when they asked the president, well, Mr. President, what experience do you have leading? I'm running my presidential campaign. Well, actually, David Axelrod was running the presidential campaign. And what did David Axelrod say when he was asked, how do you plan to end the race? He said, we're trying to find the fastest way to 270 electoral votes. He didn't say we're trying to win the popular vote. Not what he said, because it's not important, because it doesn't mean anything. But we've spent a lot of time and energy on the changing the electoral college, and it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. So Stacey Abrams, who ran for governor in Georgia in last year, and she says the election was stolen from her, and the man who became governor, who was her competitor, he was also Secretary of State. He implemented voter registration or voter suppression rules. Wherever we've had voter registration laws changed, we've had an increase in minority voter participation. That's just the statistics. That's just a fact, not the other way around. Sorry. So anyway, Stacey, who's steady complaining that she was cheated out of the governorship, said during an interview with the Post, uh, she said, when I declared, there was a group that just thought it was impossible for a black woman to cut through the history of racism and sexism in the state of Georgia. And I certainly couldn't accomplish something winning as a Democrat that white men had not been able to accomplish for 15 years. She said, friends who uh, diminish their assumption of my capacity because of uh, phenotype, okay, uh, that was the most depressing and saddening part. Hmm. Particularly women who helped me in my first race and who urged me to run for leader, who understood that I had navigated so many difficulties and had been an incredibly successful leader. But in this moment of opportunity, could not push themselves past the lack of imagination that I could do this, in essence, become governor of Georgia. It was repeatedly, you're so smart, you're so capable, you would absolutely be a perfect governor, but whispers, but you're a black woman, as though they were giving me some fatal diagnosis. This is Stacey Abrams talking, okay? Now, Stacey's out of office, as you know, and she never served in an executive capacity at the state, local, or federal level. But that's exactly the position former Representative Beto O'Rourke is in. Beto O'Rourke has never served as a leader, has never had an executive position. And Beto runs around and he jumps on desk and he talks about how great he is and I'd be the next best thing since sliced bread. Ooh, look at me, Robert Franklin, Beto O'Rourke. Abrams could enter the presidential race, they said relatively late, but unless and until she sees Biden collapse without a credible alternative, she might be wiser, they say, to play king or queen maker and continue her quest for voting reform and for a fair 2020 census count. Yes, a fair 2020, and not count the 45 million illegals in our country. Being one of the more than 20 candidates in a race dominated by a former vice president is not the best use of her skills or energy, according to this reporter. So, her response, Stacey Abrams, was like, hey, I could do the job if given the chance. Electability. Well, it's not a job that a woman in America is going to get anytime soon. And my thing is very clear. I'm for the best person. I don't care if it's a man or a woman. I'm for someone who's going to stand up and fight. Donald Trump stood up to China. He's standing up to China. He's fighting for us. He's fighting for a better future for our children. He's fighting for a better America. That's what these trade deficits are about. That's what these tariffs are about. I had a great discussion yesterday morning at my club with a good friend of mine about tariffs and the impact of tariffs. And I said to him very clearly the that we've used tariffs to protect American jobs and American markets since the 1780s. Since the 1780s, the formation of the country. Most people think the country was formed in 1775. Well, that's not quite true. It's more like 1783. But who's counting? If we want to count the Continental Congress and the Continental Army, okay, fine. But when we formally talk about these things and having trade and having a standing army and having a cabinet and having diplomats in the state, the commerce, yeah, yeah, those things happen in the 1780s. So phenotype. When we talk about phenotype, I mentioned that, and it's a word that probably needs to be explained a little bit because it is not a word that you see often or you use often. So I'm going to share what it means with you. Phenotype means, and this is from Webster's Dictionary, the set of observable characteristics of an individual resulting from the interaction of its genotype with the environment. Now, genotype means genetically formed or your environment. It's genetics, something you can't get away from. So, Stacey Abrams said that, hey, the reason I didn't get elected is because I'm a black woman and they're just not ready for me. Well, you weren't the best candidate. You didn't have any executive experience. The man who beat you had been Secretary of State, name rec, track record. Everybody who got their driver's license went through Secretary of State. Okay. Hey, what can you say? Just talking, just telling the truth. Now, liberals, they just always overwhelm me talking about the talking about how we need more immigrants in this country. I don't care what they say about black unemployment. It may be low, but there are plenty of black folks who have dropped out of the roles, who've dropped off the radar screen, and who need to be hired, need to be re-enter the workplace. It would be interesting to get a real tab and a real tally on black labor participation, because I'm sure it's low, very low, given the age and of the qualifications. It's about age, working age of people who are either working or not working. It's called a participation rate. It's the rate that we really use on for unemployment, not the unemployment rate that you get. The 4%, the 3%, that kind of thing. As it turns out, according to this article in the Post, and I'm doing a lot of posts today for some reason. I got fascinated with the Post and some of their articles, but this particular article, as it turns out, our country is not filled up, right? And they're talking about how cities in Washington or in New York, Utica, Buffalo, Syracuse, um, after the Trump administration drastically cut the number of refugees allowed into the country. Um, New York City got 1,200 refugees in the last fiscal year compared to 5,000 in the last 2 years. So whose jobs are they taking? Americans' jobs. But see, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce or the U.S. government, they have no problem giving jobs to anyone who's a foreigner. It's amazing. Last year, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Center for Health Statistics, found that the total fertility rate, a theoretical figure that estimates the number of births a woman will have in her lifetime, fell by 18% from 2007 to 2017 in large metropolitan areas. Now, 16% in smaller metro areas and 12% in rural areas. Interesting. Fewer people, we have fewer workers, produce less, and shrink the economy. When too low, economies can rapidly contract, and the small working age population has to support a large retired population. Well, that's what's going on now. We have to deal with that. When we need to encourage these women to have babies, especially the smart ones, not the ones sitting at home with two or three baby daddies. I don't want people to get the wrong impression. I'm not saying, let's go out here and give these people who can't afford to have babies. Let's encourage them to have more. But no. They're bad people to begin with. They're irresponsible. How do you have a baby when you have no way to take care of it, no way to support it? You can't, or you can, but welfare is not the answer, and they know that. Welfare is trickle. It's chump change. It's barely uh, survivable or subsistence uh, money or services. I'm serious. It's horrible. And these people have been misled into pursuing getting welfare or having children without having a father in the home. I have a dad. Dad is very critical, very important. And don't tell me that your son can be the substitute of uh, uh, your household and your mate, and he'll be a good daddy. No, daddies are daddies and sons are sons, and black mothers need to start acting like that instead of like they're their son's friends or their son's companion. It's ridiculous. I'm looking at the job openings and the labor turnover summary from May 7th, last Tuesday. and they say that the number of hires was little change at 5.7 million in March. The hires rate was 3.8%. The hires level was a little change for both private and for government. And the number of hires was little change in all industries and in all four regions. How about that? This is like I said, this is if you look at economic news and where's the website? Let's see, what's the website? But it goes over, it's a jobs report. It's really interesting. And they're talking about the number of jobs that are open. Well, they're open for a reason. I mean, slavery is over. Pay people. You want good workers? Pay them. American will do a good day's work for a good day's pay. That's the American way. We can't knock that. So I've talked about a couple of things and want to leave you with something, a little levity, because we always go so heavy. I want to leave you with a little levity here. Tom Brady and his longtime receiver is, what's that boy's name? Edelman. Edelman. And Edelman just received his degree from Kent State. He dropped out in '09, got in the NFL draft, and has been playing ball for 10 years and finally went back, got his degree. Or maybe, I'm sorry, maybe it was '03. I can't remember. Let's see here. Maybe I didn't print it off, but I thought I just saw a picture of Tom Brady in his handsome self. Michigan man, like me, go blue. But anyway, Tom Brady was teasing him, and he said, "Hey, I guess you've set another record. Taking 14 years to get your degree." And these guys, and Edelman teased him back and said, "I guess in the off season, thought I had more of a leash." And Brady texted back and said, "No, no, you don't." I thought that was great. That's camaraderie. That's friendship. That's who we are. That's what makes us great. That's what makes Americans great. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about Tiger Woods' wrongful death lawsuit. It's a bunch of poppycock. We'll deal with it. We always do here at the Reality Check. Going to have a little breakdown and analysis of what's going on. So join us then and tune in tomorrow, same time, same place. Okay. Uh oh. Okay. 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 I recorded that. Okay. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.